Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you I have a Bjorn's Mighty Thoughts video. I'm going to talk a bit here about Starfield because, well, recently I had actually just, out of boredom, if you will, I decided to cruise around my favorite websites on the internet to find some entertainment, and I came across the Starfield trailer, and I knew about the trailer a while ago. Admittedly speaking, I didn't get on the hype train and watch it right away. And I finally sit down and I finally watched the presentation that Bethesda had done for the game. And I did find some very entertaining things, or interesting things, if you will, about Starfield. First off, the one thing I thought was really cool that they showed off was the environment. I thought that was just great. You can see the environment here, some of the footage I have here from the trailer for Starfield. The cities look great. I feel they look great. They look fleshed out. I would have liked to have seen more outposts, though. I would have liked to honestly see, in general terms, more of the environment. Because from what I can understand right now, when it comes to like the major massive cities, there's only going to be 4 of them, which I find interesting because like Skyrim had 8, I think. No, it was 7 or 8. It's been a while since I've played Skyrim. So the fact that there's only going to be 4 massive cities kind of throws me off, especially because of the scale of the game. So I kind of wonder if there's not going to be some kind, I'm sure there's going to be some rinky-dink little mud hole type towns, on the ass elbow of the galaxy that you're going to find as well. Or at least I hope so, because, well, going by the scale they say this game is, that's going to be a pretty empty galaxy, to be honest. Now, the character customization, of course, it's a Bethesda game, so the character customization is going to be really out of the ballpark. There's going to be a lot of customization options. They're essentially bragging that, hey, you're going to be able to change like everything about your character and in different ways. They showed a little bit about that in the trailer itself. I'm not surprised, it being a Bethesda game. That's kind of like their normal go-to thing. But the next thing I did find interesting about the character customization is they're shooting more for like a career life path character system, which I've played tabletop role-playing games that uses a career life path type system, and those systems are great if you're doing, a game with very limited races or even just one race. Like Cyberpunk is done that way, where it's a career life path system. Even though Star Trek has multiple races, Star Trek Adventures is done that way as well, where it's a career life path system where essentially you're upgrading your education, your profession, etc., dictates your skills, your attributes, and things of that nature, and your specializations. So I think a career life path system is really the way to go, because going by the trailer, outside of alien animals, alien creatures, if you will, the game looks like it's only going to be humans. I have no problem with that. I mean, it's, I guess aliens. I mean, I kind of want to see aliens, but at the same time, I kind of don't want to see aliens, because, aliens is such a typical sci-fi trope, if you will. So getting away from having multiple alien races and still being in a sci-fi setting is, in my opinion, a bit different. And honestly, it's a bit more interesting when it's done, especially when it's done well. Don't get me wrong. I think Star Wars with its alien races is pretty cool, but at the same time, too, some of the alien races in Star Wars are ridiculous as all hell. It doesn't even some of them don't even seem practical. There's going to be base and shipbuilding. That doesn't surprise me. The shipbuilding did a little bit. I expected that there was just going to be a couple different types of ships that you could buy that were pre-made, pre-generated, if you will, and you get what you get. But the base building doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's kind of been a trope for Bethesda games forever, really. I mean, realistically, as far back as Morrowind, you could build bases. Although Morrowind, everything was kind of pre-generated, and essentially what you did is you paid for different sections, upgrades of your settlement, and that would change the settlement according to what upgrade it was. And that was kind of the same case as well with Skyrim, but then Fallout 4 really brought base building out, even though it was really buggy. And that being said, Fallout 76 kind of increased even more how the base building was done, but once again, especially at launch, that was also really buggy. So I am kind of concerned that these features are going to be very buggy features, especially at first, but who knows? Maybe they're going to take the time to refine it. Yeah, sure. Combat looks fine. The footage they showed there, the combat, honestly, to me, combat, you know, it doesn't look like Call of Duty. It doesn't look like Escape from Tarkov. You know, it kind of looks like the typical, the combat system's going to be clunky, but it's going to work type deal. I mean, that's pretty much their hallmark. The creation engine, honestly, I don't think is a good engine for combat purposes, let alone you have both ranged and melee combat. And some games they may do one area really well in the aspect of, like, most gun-based games, like Call of Duty does a great job on gunplay, but then the melee system is just blah. Anyway, and at least here they can kind of shoot for the middle. Now, that being said, it does look like an improvement over, you know, Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4, which those games are antiques at this point. So, yeah, I guess that's like being called the nicest guy in prison anyway. It's also going to have ship combat. I think that's rad. That really got my attention, was the ship combat. Now, from what I understand of the ships, when you're landing on a planet and taking off from a planet, it's going to be like an automatic, kind of like an autopilot type deal. You're not going to control that. But then when you're in space, you're controlling your ship, etc. And that actually got my attention, because that's going to help with the immersion factor. Because let's be honest, even though you're not actually going to be able to land your ship, even though it would be a nice feature, come on, let's be honest, you could easily, you know, by this point in the universe, I'm sure they'd be able to have a little button they could just press and it would just automatically land the ship as well. And at least you don't have to learn how to land, because, let's be honest, sometimes the hardest thing to do is learning how to perfectly land something. I've been playing Arma 3 for years, and I'm still trying to learn how to land a jet fighter efficiently on a regular basis. So, you know, landings can be difficult. Having an autopilot be able to do it for you, fine by me. Now, the next thing is the guns. The guns, I think, look awesome. They have a sci-fi look. They have a sci-fi feel to them, but they don't really seem ridiculous. I'm going to give them credit for that. You know, sometimes sci-fi games, they get a little bit too crazy on how the firearms look, and it kind of turns me off of the game for some odd reason. I'm a firearms nut. I'm a gun nut. So what can I say? I like guns, and I like my guns to look like guns. I mean, essentially we've had guns for a long time now, dating back, at least 300-400 years at this point. And at this point, we kind of know how to make an ergonomic firearm. And, you know, that's kind of where I'm getting at here about the guns looking more realistic, but still having a sci-fi feel to them is what I prefer in a sci-fi game, especially one that has guns. Now, the character models. I think the character models they showed were great. The NPC models. All the character models looked really good. And that's one thing that Bethesda's always done a really good job on. I mean, yeah, they've had some bugs when it comes to the character models. But, you know, yeah, I mean, it's always worked. pretty much. Like, character models have always worked the way they're supposed to work, so I can't really say anything bad there. So all I can really say is
nice fucking models.
Now, that being said, they're saying that this is going to be their biggest game yet. Huge galaxy, over 1,000 planets to explore is what they're saying. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not going to have 1,000 worlds. I guarantee they will have 1,000 worlds, because that would be a huge feather in their cap to be able to say that, yep, we made a game with this huge galaxy that's got over 1,000 worlds in it, and we made it work. We said we were going to deliver this, and we delivered. That would be a huge feather in their cap. Now, that being said, though, I suspect probably at least half that galaxy is probably going to be damn near empty, where you're going to land on a planet, and there might be some wildlife, if you will, and some minerals and shit to collect, and some caves to explore, but you're probably not going to find much else. You're not going to find an outpost, or maybe you'll find a completely abandoned outpost. That being said, though, that's still 500 worlds that you can explore, and I suspect there's going to be at least something on it. Something worthwhile. Either an enemy base, or a small town, or, whatever. Now, that being said, too, because they're aiming for such a big world, that's going to allow for essentially experimentation and expansion through DLCs and through mods. Because of the base building, that's going to let you set up a lot of different outposts, maybe set up a mining world or something like that. So there's a lot of advantages to having such a big world. Because I do want to guess right now that they are already anticipating that people are going to mod the hell out of this game. Because that's what people does with Bethesda games, ain't it? They just mod the hell out of them. And especially because they are sticking with Creation Engine. This is an updated engine. It's going to be done with Creation Engine 2. But that being said, still, even though it's an updated engine, it's upgraded and etc., it's still it's still Creation Engine at its core. Now, that being said, too, I've also seen stuff about that there's over 500 devs. Hey, that don't surprise me with a game this big. Fallout 76 had around 200 or a little over 200 devs. And this game's going to be even bigger than Fallout 76. I don't know how big the maps are for the worlds. Apparently, they're going to be pretty huge, too. That essentially you'll be able to land somewhere and on a planet, and you're going to have a huge map to explore. It's not going to be a small area to explore. It's not, supposedly, it won't be kind of a pathway type thing. It's going to be wherever you can go. And in all honesty, once again, that's kind of a hallmark of a Bethesda game. That's always been their big thing. So the fact that that's what they're going for, that doesn't surprise me. Although, cautiously speaking, how big is this game going to be download size wise? And the other thing is, too, is it's just, 1,000, what are you looking at? 1,000 worlds? You're probably looking at, 20,000 hours of gameplay to explore every nook and cranny in this game? That's going to be crazy. Absolutely crazy. I honestly, I think after so long, most people will probably just get bored of it and not even bother exploring that much. Now, that being said, though, I do predict that when the game's released, this game's going to be a fucking dumpster fire. I really do. Just going, and listen, folks, I'm not trying to shit on Bethesda. I'm not trying to shit on Starfield itself. I'm just trying to be honest here with you of what I think. This is where I get to my true honest opinions, and where I'm going to kind of talk negatively a little bit here about Starfield. Because let's be honest. Let's look at the track record of Bethesda. And essentially every game they've done since, I've been playing Bethesda games since Morrowind on the Xbox. And that game was a buggy ass mess. And then, of course, Fallout Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, they were messes when they were released. Skyrim was a bit of a mess when it was released. And Fallout 76, don't even get me started on that game. I mean, that was unplayable when it was released. Now, I don't think this game will be unplayable. I think this game will actually be fairly good on release, but I think it's still going to be a dumpster fire. Honestly, I think if you really want me to put it in comparison, I think this is going to be Cyberpunk 2077 all over again. And that game was a dumpster fire when it was released. And yeah, before you Cyberpunk fans get your underwear in a bunch, yeah, I mean, the game's better now than it used to be, and I acknowledge that, but when it was released, it was a fucking dumpster fire. The AI was bad, the car spawns were bad, there was so much of the game that was bad and unpolished. I think that's what we're going to get here, where probably the core game is going to be pretty polished, but once you really start spreading out, and the further you spread out from the core story of the game, the worse it's going to get at first. And I'm sure give it a year or two, it'll be fixed up and running great. Of course, a part of that will probably be with mods. That being said, we know, as I said, we know Bethesda games, it just works. So we'll see how that goes. The next thing I'm kind of predicting is, of course, there's going to be DLCs for this game. I think the next thing, though, is we're going to see some greasy shit, like greasy-ass Randy Pitchford shit with the Creation Club. I think we know that's going to be coming, because that's just kind of also become a Bethesda mainstay at this point. And, of course, the next thing I anticipate with this game is we are going to see mod support, like big-time mod support. Once again, Bethesda games, bonus of it being on the Creation Engine at its core, too, is that the modders are going to be... The modders are actually already frothing at the bit. I mean, I've seen posts about the modders drooling at the bit to have their way with this game. So that doesn't surprise me that we're going to see... I predict we're going to see mods probably day one, to be honest. Now, that may not please Bethesda, but yeah, I mean, that's the modding community. It's still keeping games like Fallout New Vegas alive. Skyrim is still alive. A lot of the Bethesda games years later, even over a decade later, is still alive and still has an avid fan base because of the modding community. Now, that being said, I've seen a lot of people talking about Star Wars mods. Hey, come on, folks. Let's be honest here. There's going to be some mods that's going to add some equipment, or there's going to be a few mods that's going to fix the game. There's going to be some equipment mods, Starship mods, etc. like that. And then half of Nexus mods is going to be mods to give your characters big titties and skimpy underwear, just like Skyrim. And with that being said, well, hey, there's a lot of people who like those kind of mods. I really think this game might have mods for other opportunities. Just a hint to all you modders out there. But either ways, you know what? At the end of the day, while I did kind of sound like I was shitting on Starfield for a bit there, I'm going to be perfectly honest here, folks. I think this is going to be a fucking great game. It's got a lot of potential. It's just how much of a dumpster fire is this game going to be when it's released, and how much is Bethesda going to support it, and how much and what ways are they going to support this game. But honestly, it looks promising. The scope of the game, the space exploration, the whole 9 yards. And honestly, I've been looking for a game like this, because I'm going to be honest. I mean, I've tried some other sci-fi games. Like I tried Elite Dangerous, and don't get me wrong, Elite Dangerous, I can see the potential of it being really good, but the game is so complex I couldn't get into it. So a more simplified Elite Dangerous, if you will. And this has been in development for 25 years. They've been fleshing everything out, fleshing the design of the planets out. One of the ex-developers who's been working for Bethesda for 17 years now Yeah, Perky Pile talked about in his interview everything that Bethesda was doing down to they had to actually they were researching like what kind of coloration would the planet have just based on what kind of minerals it would have, how would different essentially factions or how would basically starship based humans would use the different minerals and stuff like that they would collect. So I mean, when it comes to the scope of the game and the immersion factor, I think it's going to be there, to be honest. I'm honestly really hopeful for this game. I've been keeping an eye on it at this point. I've been seeing a lot of rumors on when it's going to be released. I know recently it got pushed back again, that it was supposedly going to be released this year, which I haven't seen anything that really said it was going to be released this year, but hey, whatever. It went from this year to the first half of 2023 for the release. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure we're all going to be pretty pleased with the scope of this game, to be honest. And like I said, from what I've seen, this game looks like it's going to be awesome. I wouldn't be surprised if this actually ends up being the game of the year for 2023, but then again, you know, it could have been the game of the year for the last 5 years with the kind of competition that's been out there for games, especially from AAA studios making games of this kind of scale, is just non-existent outside of, well, Cyberpunk, but that was a dumpster fire. Anyway, folks, thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Have yourself a wonderful day.